어떻게 이렇게 바닥만 기고 있지? 오장에라도 주면 좋은데 시도 그러게요. 10분 봉이 완전 그냥 시퍼런 것들만 어떻게 이렇게 반응이 없지? 그렇다고 이게 뭐 악재가 있는 것도 아닌 것 같고. 맞아. 우리 방송 끝내고 나가면은 그때 막 움직이는 경향이 너무 많지. 손절했어요? 영수님도? 기어이 600을 깨네. 끝내주네. 쉣. 아, 그래요? 20일? 20일 넘어서? 아이고 씨, 아니 뭐 반등할 기미가 안 보이네 진짜. 아 그러게요. 짜증난다 이제. 씨. 아니 지들이 뭐 지렁이야? 바닥만 끼고 다녀. 아니 지렁이도 가끔 바람 불 때 날아다니기도 할 텐데 지들은 어떻게 뭐 이렇게 바닥을 땅굴만 파고 있어? 아 일단은 지금 오전장 원웨이죠. 완전 원웨이. 뭐 저기 반등도 제대로 없는 원웨이장이. 아니 그 돌풍 불고 그럴 때 지렁이도 쓸려서 날아다니고 그러잖아요. 근데 뭐 국선 이렇게 날아갈 때 지들은 어떻게 비스무리하게 가지도 못해? 야 이제 650 정도가 거기가 이제 650이라도 위로 올라가야 되네. 자 12시까지는 이제 1분 30초. 아유 그래도 에미씨님은 손절 내줬는데도 다른 사람들 수익 나라고 저렇게 또. 익절하면 커피 쏘기. 아 이벤트 한번 해야겠네. 그러면 만약에 익절 나온다 그러면 다음 주에 이벤트 한번 하자 그러면. 중국 12시 4분. 중국이 좀 안 쪼개지나? 얘네 통일된 지도 꽤 됐잖아 이제. 한 중국은 한 120개 나라로 좀 한 쪼개져야 되는 거 아니야 좀? 너무 공산당 한이 너무 오래 통치를 하는 것 같은데. 망가질 대로 다 망가지고. 야 12시 넘었다. 어쩜 이렇게 움직임이 안 나오지? 씨. 자, 반등 시작해봐라 좀. 왜? 국선은 또 꺾이네. 국선에서는 개인들이 좀 수익 좀 냈겠는데, 매수세가 많이 줄어들었고 그러면 청산을 많이 했다는 것 같은데. 아니요, 아니요. 오전장 1시 정도까지. 1시. 그 안에 결판이 나지 않을까? 이야, 그래. 골드 반등 들어온다. 얘는 골드랑 비슷하게 다녀요, 요즘. 야, 50을 넘어줘야 되는데 여기 부딪히지 말고. 그러네. 양복 하나 나왔네. 한 두 개만 더 나오면 되겠구만. 하나, 둘. 좀 긴 양봉. 아, 이거 부딪히지 말아야지. 국선과 나스닥이 못 가니까 또 밀리네. 아까 갈 때는 못 따라가고 밀릴 때 밀리고 그러니 반등이 없지. 씨. 반대로 다니는구나. 자, 뭐 오랑캐가 650 위로 갈 수는 있겠어, 지들이. 이래, 기대도 안 한다. 이제 1분 정도 남았어요. 12시 10분. 자, 여기서 밀리지 말고 가야 되는데. 그치. 뭐 이것들이 뭐 시동 걸었다가도 시동 꺼트리고 이봐 50을 못 넘겨 야에라 이씨 오랑캐가 그렇지 뭐. 어이 야또 내려오냐. 아, 미안해 오랑캐 니네 충분히 할 수 있어. 아이씨 좀 반등 좀 해주면 안 되겠냐 오랑캐들. 오랑캐라고 안 할게 좀. 어 10분 넘었는데 움직임이. 오랑캐라고 해서 빠진 거야? 아이씨 좀 오형 좀 올려. 진심으로 사과해야 돼? 아휴 오 저기 중국 형아들 미안해 빨리 좀 올려봐. 아, 우리도 점심 먹으러 가야 된단 말이야. 좀 올려. 니네도 점심 먹으러 갈 텐데 곧. 국선이 슬쩍 꺾이네. 어이씨. 아, 지루해 죽겠네. 씨. 또 내려와? 그러게. 아, 근데 저 약속도 있고. 김 과장이 3시 반부터 하잖아요. 어? 그 안에 어떻게든 1시 안에 좀 브레이크 타임 전에 이게 결판이 나야 될 텐데. 그러니까 꿀주먹님 내 말이 그 말이야. 어떻게 항생이 반등이 한 6, 70틱이 안 나올 수가 있지? 이야, 대박이네. 야, 또 내려. 이거 600 다시 깨면은 니네는 영원한 오랑캐다. 절대 씨 사과한 거 다 취소야. 그러게. 하늘바다님 그런 것 같아요. 매수 잡은 거 다 많이 죽었을 것 같은데. 그동안 매수 잡고 버티던 개미들 많이 오늘 컷 내줬을 것 같은데. 700 내려오면서 600 뭐 많이 컷 나갔을 것 같은데 많이. 뭐 지가 갈 때 되면 가겠지. 음. 헐 대박. 오늘 27일 오늘이잖아. 오늘 아침에 이천 골프장에서 60대 여성이 날아오는 골프공에 머리를 맞고 사망했다네. 와, 골프도 하이바를 쓰고 쳐야 되나 봐. 가긴 오랑캐가 가봤자지 뭐. 아니 그리고 그 손흥민 아버지 하는 거 그거 뭐예요 그거 또? 그 혹독하게 훈련시켰다고 그러는 거야. 진짜 뭐 인정사정 없이 두드려 팬 거야. 그건 아닌 것 같은데. 그러면서 돈을 요구했다고. 오모탄이 8계약이에요? 와, 그러면 그거를 어떻게 해? 그 친 사람도 책임이 있는 거고 골프장도 책임이 있고. 치, 날벼락이네 날벼락. 진짜 날벼락이에요. 나. 아, 원타님 43이 저거구나. 뭐 얼마 안 됐네 저러. 평균 단가가 좋았네. 그렇겠죠? 그 같은 일행이 친 건 아니겠지? 우와, 지질이 궁상이네 이씨. 가겠다는 거야 말겠다는 거야. 이거 이렇게 못 가면은 또 빠지겠다는 얘긴데 그러면. 아, 650을 못 넘기네 이거. 국선 다시 살짝 또 올라오고 있고. 아, 그 정도 700까지면 70틱인데 그 정도는 뭐 순식간이 그 정도는 가져야 순식간에. 이야, 이건 좀 너무한데. 얘네 밑에서 바닥에서 또 박스권이네. 아유. 지루한 패턴이 좁은 박스권 아주. 이건 뭐 여기서 확 추가를 해야 돼. 아, 지루해. 움직임도 거지 같고. 와, 어머타님 또 들어가서 평단 32. 그럼 수익 중이네. 이야, 뭐지 이것들. 여기서 이렇게 좁은 박스권이야? 30분? 2분 후에 660? 가능하지. 국선 위로 잘 가고. (632) 정도면은 근데 뭐 바닥권이죠. 바닥권에서 전저점은 안 갔고. 야, 근데 빠르게 좀 반등이 좀 나와서 650, 700 정도에 안착을 해서 놀아야 되는데 이거 언제든지 전저점을 언제든지 뚫겠다는 얘기인데요. 알파고하고 심리 싸움을 하는 거야? 준이님? 원몬타님, 30틱만 가자. 좀 빨리 좀 후다닥 가자. 으이구. 테무? 테무가 뭐야? 뭘 국산은 다시 올라와? 테무가 뭐예요? 테무? 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 한국에서 난리라고? 테무가 뭐야? 아, 뭐 쇼핑 사이트예요? 그러네. 야, 근데 이거 국선은 다시 좀 반등이 다시 시작됐고, 항생은 이제 뭐 또 바닥에서 계속 땅바닥을 기어다니고 있고, 미치겠다. 뭐 오일도 아니 심지어 오일도 좀 반등을 하네. 아이 진짜 이씨. 오, 환장했네. 진짜 뭔 조화 속이지 이거 얘네. 아니 다른 때도 1시 퇴근한 적 종종 있었어요. 물렸을 때. 아 이거 지금은 물린 거야. 안 물린 거 이거. 뭐 몇 틱 되지도 않는데 한 50틱 물린 건데. 아이씨. 만천? 만천이면은 백 만천. 지금 하면은 190만 원이나 돼? 그러네. 한 180, 190만 원 정도 되나 보네. 190만 원 정도 되나 봐요. 아, 이놈의 오랑캐가 발목을 물고서는 놔주질 않네 아주. 진짜 아유 씨. 와 진짜 이렇게 답답하게 흐른다고? 너무하네. 아 지긋지긋하다 이씨. 또 내려오고 있어. 얘 혼자만 이러네. 완전 좁은 박스에 갇혔네요. 와, 뭐 이렇게 좁은 박스권에서 와, 뭐 20택? 이게 무슨 항생이야? 아이씨.
매도 접수.
음, 698로 그냥 700 아래에서 5청 하고 비 온다고요? 어머타님 어디라 그랬지? 제주도? 아, 제주도. 아, 거기는 비 오겠네. 이씨, 어쩌자고. 결판도 못 내고, 이거 뭐 하는 짓이지? 최근 들어서 이렇게 움직이는 거는 정말 간만인 것 같은데, 이렇게 움직임이 둔화됐다고? 250틱? 총 움직인 거 250틱. 그러고 나서 박스권이 너무 좁은 박스권에서, 아이씨, 이러면 좀 밑으로 또 내려간다는 얘기 같은데. 국선도 다시 밀리고, 이건 뭐 오전장에는 안 되겠네. 오후장을 뭐 기대를 해봐야겠는데, 참 애매하네요. 만약에 오후장 가서 550 마지막 추가되기까지 진입이 된다면 얼마예요? 130에 600 초반이 되겠네. 지금 자리가 되겠네. 평균 단가가. 그 정도면 싸워볼 만한 거 아닌가? 아이씨. 어쨌든 이렇게 올청도 대기해놨고, 손절은 이씨 뭐 밑으로 보이지도 않네 이제. 만약에 550 마지막 추가가 진입됐는데도 불구하고 그냥 밑으로 주장창 간다. 와, 씨, 뭐, 한 400 후반, 490 컷대기. 500 밑으로 가면은 뭐, 가망 없어요. 어디까지 갈지도 모르겠고. 17, 450, 컷. 설정. 그럼 한 2, 30틱? 120, 30틱 컷이네. 자, 이렇게 진행을 하겠습니다. 결판 못 내네. 자, 만약에 이게 올라오면은 뭐 얼마 되지도 않아요. 60틱이야 지금. 진입가 대비 60틱. 올라오면은 본청을 하시든 약수익으로 내시든 아니면 1, 2차로 나눠서 하시든 그거는 알아서 하시고, 이제 밑으로 내려왔을 때가 문제죠. 밑으로 내려왔을 때 마지막 추가 진입을 하고, 거기서도 더 내려갔을 때는 이제 컷을 잡아야겠죠. 이렇게 그렇게 진행하기로 하고, 우리는 여기서 맞춰야죠. 뭐 내가 맞춰야 이것들이 위로 솟구쳐 오르려나. 아유, 오전에 고생만 하셨네. 김혜진님, 그러게 아직 모르죠. 네, 엘리님, 나나님, 엘리님, 네, 감사합니다. 자, 어쨌든 점심 드시고 오후장 화이팅 하시길 바랍니다. 이따가 오후장은 김과장의 해외 선물 시간이 있죠. 그 시간에 또 같이들 하시고요. 원마타님, 네, 사임당님, 공사공사님, 캐시님, 인사이타님, 감사합니다. 네, 수익정창님, 감사합니다. 자, 이만 물러가겠습니다. 다음 주 화요일날 봬요. 월요일은 항생이 휴장이에요. 월요일날 휴장. 우리는 화요일 날 만나 뵙겠습니다. 네, 플러스 골드님, 레드피쉬님, 선물 캐스퍼님 감사합니다. 에미씨님, 네, 다음 주에 봬요. 신변차님, 감사합니다. 다음 주에 뵙겠습니다. 수고 많으셨습니다. 감사합니다. 네, 파라리님, 네, 다음 주 월요일이 아니라 화요일이에요. 월요일은 휴장. 네, 신변차님, 네, 감사합니다. 해나님, 네, 감사합니다. 네, 준이님, 다음 주에 봬요. 네, 파라님, 그리고 우서바요님, 네, 다음 주에 뵙겠습니다.
And I took a course and I learned TM, Transcendental Meditation, which wasn't really it didn't super resonate with me. It hasn't stuck with me, but it is something that I tried. So it's been a trial of just different things. And I guess that's just what I call when I say I'm spiritual. I'm on that very personal journey with myself, looking inward.
Yeah,
is sort of what I mean by that.
Yeah, but I love those examples because it is a practicing of different methods and techniques to find what works for you. And you've obviously found, both in Reiki and sound healing, what really soothes your soul and your healing, which I think is such an important part of it. I think spirituality or healing or any of these terms can often get, they're so big, and they can get a good or bad name based on a particular practice. And the idea is that it's just such a big umbrella term for so many practices that it's so important that people keep an open mind to finding what works for them. And you're right, there may be a certain aspect that just doesn't, float your boat and doesn't make you feel great, but there's other parts that could reveal it to you, very powerfully. I think when I lived as a monk, we traveled a lot in southern India where a lot of temples are around 2,000 to 5,000 years old. And I never had been anywhere that old. Like my school was 500 years old that I went to in England. And so that was pretty old.
Yeah.
But then when you go
Mine was like 80 years old.
Yeah, exactly. Like my school is literally 1573, I think was the year it was founded.
Oh my gosh.
By the Queen in England.
Insane.
And so our school was pretty old and had this big history. But when I went to these temples that were like 2,000, 5,000 years old, and you see this incredible architecture, it's maintained. I never realized that I found going on pilgrimage to be so deeply healing for me, because I would go into these chambers where sound, similarly, has been maintained and preserved for thousands of years. People have meditated, chanted, played bowls, gongs, whatever it may be in these spaces, and you can still feel the reverberation when you walk in.
That sounds so amazing.
And it's really powerful. Like it really feels like, and so again, that was something that I never would have known growing up in London and, having to go to that experience. And those temples are mainly in southern India.
Sounds like I need to go to southern India.
Yeah, where you see that like real ancient history of spirituality in southern India. And so those kind of places for me were like things that I never thought I'd discover. And then there's parts that I'm like, I would never go and do X, Y, Z. So how did you find these things, or were there friends, were there recommendations? Was it the internet? Like, how were you discovering certain things for you? Because I feel like that's quite difficult for people to
Yeah.
find.
I mean, it's easy in LA
Yes,
because you're
LA,
surrounded by people who are, there's a crystal shop on every corner, genuinely. And
there's a tarot card reader.
Truly. And I think I was always like, oh, tarot's interesting. That happened, a couple of years ago. I bought my first tarot deck. And Reiki, actually, a makeup artist on Riverdale who worked on the first and second season, she was a Reiki master, and she was telling me about it, and one day performed Reiki on me, and I was like, whoa, this is so cool. And so I was always super interested in diving into that, and then the lockdown just kind of gave me a boost to explore that, because I was like, damn, I could use some healing. Maybe I should heal myself. And then it also just came from, I think, the word wellness. Like, what is wellness? And I Googled wellness retreats in California. And I was like, okay, maybe not a retreat. I don't really want to be doing yoga and eating vegetables for a week. Like, not necessarily my vibe. I wanted to be a little bit more personalized and grounding for just me. And I found my sound healer in Mount Shasta. And so I went and saw her by myself and really kind of had a firsthand experience of sound healing and past life readings and cord cutting ceremonies, and not astral projection, but just sort of your astral bodies and things like that. It was like this world that was suddenly opening up to me that was so, I've always just found this kind of the afterlife, I guess, very fascinating. I've always been terrified and intrigued at the idea of ghosts and like what's that? Like, what is talking to a spirit? It's so weird. And I've always felt like I've been very highly intuitive, kind of in-tuned person. Oh, I see symbols and I see things are very serendipitous, and there's all these coincidences that are happening. And so I also was looking into, and to be honest, TikTok was
after all of that was not what I was expecting. I was not expecting.
But there is such a spiritual side of TikTok that is so vast.
Can you put me onto that side?
Yes. I mean, it's the algorithm. You start seeing one video and then you're seeing a million of them. And I was stumbling on these pages of just like highly intuitive people. And I reached out to one of them and said, do you offer mentorships or something? And she said, yeah. And so I did a mentorship with a psychic for 3 months, where she taught me how to heal my ancestral trauma. And I believe we all have psychic abilities. It's a matter of training your brain. Some people are just born being more in tune and tapped into that skill, but I do believe that we all have the ability to tap into them. So I was really just trying to learn how to do that because I thought that was so fascinating. She did teach me how to talk to the deceased. Wow. Not that I can do it well. I will say I feel that I've only successfully done it like twice or 3 times. And even then, while you're doing it, you're sort of like, am I doing this? Like,
most people, when they would hear these things, there's judgment about, that's just wacky, or that's whatever. Like, but what I'm seeing in you, which I'm appreciating, is just, hey, I'm trying to be me. Like, I'm right now, I'm exploring this. Right now, I'm experimenting with this. I'm learning this. Maybe it's something that I believe is true. Maybe it isn't, but I'm at least doing what I want to do now without worrying about what everyone else thinks and believes. I mean, when I chose to become a monk at 21 going on 22, 99% of my friends thought I was absolutely insane, because they're like, why would you do that? Like, why would you not want to go make money and date more women and get into another relationship and get a home or whatever it was? And so I know what it feels like to make a decision that most people around me feel doesn't make any sense and is completely against the grain of, but it was the best decision I ever made in my life. And I have zero regrets about that decision or how I spent that 3 years. And I look back at it all the time. But at the time, everyone around me thought I was making the worst decision. My family said I was committing career suicide. You know, my friends were completely confused. My society and people in our community were like, oh, you're letting your parents down and you'll never get a job again. You know, there's just so much judgment. But I was just trying to do what felt right in my intuition at this time, and it wasn't harming anyone. And I think that's the, that to me is like the barrier where it's like, well, you're trying something, it's not harming anyone. It's not harming you. It's not harming anyone around you. And if that's allowing you to explore a part of yourself, you just never know where it could go. So it's very comforting for people to hear about being into unique things, because it's almost like we all followed the same people. We all watch the same things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's nice to have a few things that are unique. A break from the norm. Exactly, a break from the norm. I want to talk to you a bit about this new show, and we were talking about this idea of you get to play these two parallel lives, which kind of with everything you're talking about, is fascinatingly connected. And I love that idea of parallel universes, of multiple lives, of the multiverse right now is such a big thing and a big talking point. Yeah. When you're playing these roles, how much of these roles are you identifying with, especially I guess like moving to LA for a career that's very much in line with you. Yeah. And then obviously becoming a pregnant mother.
I haven't experienced that
one
yet,
you haven't experienced. Like when you're doing that, how much of what you've just talked about that you're interested in kind of feeds into those roles, and when you're playing those roles and becoming these new identities?
Well, for the film, people ask, like, was it so hard to play two different characters? No, it's the same woman. So it's the same girl, just experiencing two very different things. And so that was amazing to play this woman, and I know who she was, and I created her as a character. I knew what she valued, what she wanted, and I was, we're fortunate enough as an audience to see both things play out. It is weird because I'm very I do have those existential, like, if I did make this decision, what would have happened?
Yeah, sliding doors.
And how, how would things have panned out? And the reason why I loved the script so much when I read it was she's okay in both lives. She ends up being okay. Wow. And there is no one path that you go, oh, that was the right path or that was the wrong path. It's truly just two different paths. Yeah. And I think, especially in your 20s, things happen every day. Relationships end, things, people, you can get pregnant and you think, oh, my whole life is just gone, or my whole world is shifting. And I don't think that's has to be a bad thing. Yeah. I think there are millions of ways your life can turn out. Mm-hmm. It's based off decisions you make every single day, but in the end, things are okay. Yeah. Things end up okay. I think if you stop and put too much thought into every decision you make, you're going to live a very treacherous life of feeling like you're walking on eggshells. I think it's a matter of saying, I personally like to look at it as the universe has my back. Yeah. And so I think this film also resonates with how I feel in that regard of this woman she had a positive pregnancy test and a negative one. And you see two possible scenarios out of a million of what her life could have been. Mm-hmm. And you see the journey she goes on through both, and how she still has the same ambition, and she doesn't lose herself in having a child. She still stays who she is, and she doesn't lose her ambition. And when she goes to LA and goes through the hardships of trying to make her career work, she doesn't give up. It's sort of a perseverance story, and how you don't have to lose yourself in the things that happen to you. You can still stay you. Yeah. The thing that resonates most with me with that message and the whole conversation we've had today is this idea that even in one life, you can be so many things. Yeah. And I think we always are trying to make this choice, as you're saying, like, it's like, well, do I do this? And how will that impact me? Or do I do this? And it's like, you could probably do both. Yeah. You've lived so many different lives. And I know most people. So have you. Yeah, and so have I. And most people I know have lived loads of different lives. And I think we feel forced to live one life and one truth. Mm. And I don't think that's true for anyone in reality. And when you force yourself to live one life and one truth, you actually limit what you started with, was with all these experiences and all these experiments and an openness to all these feelings. So, I like that idea of the two lives
ultimately that both work out okay.
Yeah.
And recognizing in one life you can live 3 lives or 7 and things can be okay.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I want to shift towards, you've made so many changes in your diet, your health, you've experienced chronic fatigue, you know, and we haven't talked about that. So let's dive into that actually deeply. I've been through chronic fatigue. It lasted a long time. It led to deeper gut issues. It's led to so many lifestyle changes. It was stuff that also just snuck up on me without me even being aware, because I was living so much in the mind and my heart that I wasn't even aware of what my body was going through.
Yeah.
And so I was, you know, grounding back into my body. How does it feel to live your career and experience chronic fatigue? You know, actor days are sometimes 18-hour days, if not more. Early mornings, late nights. I think people don't realize the lifestyle of making a movie or making a show where you're in a trailer all day. It's not the most comfortable, inspiring atmosphere as people think the career may be. How does that work with chronic fatigue and diet and eating out of time?
Yeah. I mean, I say to myself, I'm like, damn, I'm in the wrong career. I don't actually believe that. But, you know, I'm someone who very much needs at least 8 hours to function.
Yeah,
and so sometimes when it's a 4-hour turnaround or I have to get up and go on a plane quickly, I'm like, oh God, this is a challenge for me. But because it's something that I love to do so much, I truly just run off of the pure joy I find in what I do. And it's not so, like, you know, I take naps when I can, but I also am very much under, like, now at this point in my life, really taking my gut health seriously. I've treated my body like a junkyard for a very long time with what I've been eating. And it's got to a point where earlier this year, I knew I needed to make real changes because I was so unhappy with how I looked, but also I felt that I was doing a great disservice to my body. I spend so much time trying to better my mental health, and I don't put any of that into my physical body. And there's all this new research on how depression is directly related to your gut and all these things. And I'm like, okay, we're going to take this seriously. Yeah. And it is a truly reprogramming of bad patterns and habits that I've grown up just immediately going to the fast food, to processed foods. And it's truly been about educating myself on the better options and reading ingredients and choosing the less convenient alternative. And I actually think that the chronic fatigue has slowly started to improve.
So happy to hear
because
that.
of it.
So happy to hear
I mean, me too. I've been dealing with this basically since I was diagnosed with depression when I was 14.
Yeah.
So it's just now, and it's always, I don't know if it'll fully cure itself with my diet. We're getting there. We're trying. But it's an everyday thing, small steps, not trying to completely change everything all at once. And I think obviously in these hard times, food is a great comfort and offers a lot of, to me at least, it can be very comforting. So I do turn to food sometimes to fill that sort of emotional need. But again, recognizing that, not judging myself for it, just trying to make healthier decisions overall is what I'm very much trying to do.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can relate to everything you just said. So,
it's a daily practice.
It's a daily practice.
It is.
How would you describe your current purpose in life? Like, you know, as in where you're at right now or even today?
My current purpose
and the reason why I ask that is because I believe that, you know, when you're healing, when you're growing, when you're going through all these journeys, like there's somewhat of an intention, if you will. Mm-hmm. What is your intention then, if that's easier?
My intention, and I've actually had this intention for a very long time, and I don't really believe that, you know, you make a birthday wish, if you don't tell someone your wish, you know, like ever since I can remember, every time I've seen a shooting star, blown out birthday candles, my wish always has been, I want to be happy. And my intention is to find true happiness and peace with myself. And that is my purpose right now, to find that. And that's a big task. But but that's the intention. And I find it so, the spiritual journey has been so encouraging to me, because once you start, you never stop. It's not something that one day you're going to go, I'm healed, I'm good, I'm done. It's truly for the rest of my life, I will be seeking out growth. And that is I'm so happy about that.
So liberating.
It is. I'm like, there's always more things to learn. There's always something else to explore within myself. And that is so exciting and wonderful.
Yeah, I love that. You're so right. Like, the feeling of something ending or figuring something out is where all the pressure comes.
Yeah.
Right? When you're trying to complete something, or you're trying to end something, you're trying to get something over the finish line. Like, that's where all the stress and pressure and intensity comes from. Whereas when you say, well, I'm pretty much going to live with this. I had someone the other day ask me, actually, it's just jogged my memory. Someone said to me, they were like, well, how do I forget my past so I can move forward? I was like, you probably won't forget your past.
No.
And it's probably not a useful place to put your focus
right.
in trying to forget your past.
Yeah.
And knowing you'll never forget it liberates you, and then you can actually move forward and keep developing. And I find that sometimes our fixation's on completely the wrong target.
I agree.
And so we spend all this time trying to forget something.
Yeah.
And knowing that pretty much none of us can actually physically do that.
Well, that's what I feel about our conversation. I'm like, damn, I truly have been thinking I need to find myself, and now I actually need to just create it.
Yeah.
So that's been, thank you for that. That has been a
you led us there.
Impactful thing.
Well, you led us there.
Well, we got there together.
We got there together. All right, now we'll go to the final 5. These have to be answered in 1 word to 1 sentence maximum.
Okay, one word to 1 sentence maximum.
1 sentence is, I don't know what the official breakdown is, maybe 7 words. I don't know, I'm making it up.
Okay.
All right, so what is the best advice you've ever received?
I will say my dad always told me growing up, find a job that makes you happy. Have a career in something that makes you happy. It makes the world of a difference.
That's grace.
Yep.
Second question. What is the worst advice you've ever heard or received?
Probably don't cry.
Yeah. Question number 3. Something special that your mom did for you when you called her all those times, something that you remember that stood out?
I think just her telling me that she would be there whenever I needed her. Sometimes just hearing that is so calming. So her reassurance that you can text me when you need me. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. I love that. Question number 4, something you think people misunderstand about you if they don't know you deeply?
I think my outspokenness, is sometimes misinterpreted as ignorance, or attention seeking, whereas I just sometimes can't keep my thoughts to myself. But it's never from a bad place. It's from a place of, let's have a conversation. Not, this is my opinion and it's right. It's, no, I'm just trying to add my bit to the conversation, whether it's helpful or not.
Yeah.
It's going to be there.
I love that. And 5th and final question, which we ask every guest since day 1, is, if you could create 1 law in the world that everyone had to follow, what would it be?
1 law?
Yeah. It can be anything. Take your time. This is
Okay, 1 law that anyone had to follow. The law that I would create is, you are not allowed to tell another human being what they can and cannot feel. Period.
That's a great one. We've never had that before.
Oh, okay, so good. I was like, people have probably said that before.
No. That's and it's completely aligned with this episode.
Yeah.
Everyone, Lily Reinhart, so grateful to have had this amazing conversation with you. I could talk to you for hours. We have talked. It was so much fun getting to know you, and honestly, hearing about your journey in such a intimate, vulnerable way was so special for me personally.
For me as well. Thank you. I've been so looking forward to this.
Oh no, thank you. I had such a great time. And everyone who's been listening or watching back at home, I want to make sure that you share what stood out to you. I think there were so many incredible things that Lily mentioned, genuinely. So many amazing points, so many insights, so many great reflections that she had. And I love knowing what connected with you, because, and I know she'd love to know too. She's nodding along if you're not watching. She'd love to know too. So please do tag us on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter. You're allowed. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Like, do tag us to let us know what stood out, what was the point, what was the part, because this is one of those ones that I think you're going to listen to a few times. And as I said before, there are moments in this episode that I want you to repeat and listen to over and over again, maybe multiple times a week, because that repetition to hear that message again is what really gives us that permission to do it in our lives. Lily, any final words, any thoughts, anything you want to share?
Just thank you. Thank you for having a space to talk about things that I 2 years ago didn't know were things to talk about. So I'm very grateful to have come into this world of wellness genuinely, and that you create this environment for the conversation.
Thank you. I deeply appreciate that.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want even more videos just like this one, make sure you subscribe and click on the boxes over here. I'm also excited to let you know that you can now get my book, Think Like a Monk, from thinklikeamonkbook.com. Check below in the description to make sure you order today.
So my daughter goes to school here at the Thornton School for Music. She's a senior, and she spent the night with me last night. I'm going to tell you the story because it's relevant about both learning things the hard way and about happiness. So she slept in my bed with me last night, and it was so awesome. And I just love her, and she's 22, and she's about to like burst into the next chapter of her life. It is so exciting. And I miss her terribly, terribly. And I'm going to get like totally choked up when I think about it, because I live on the other side of the country. And I think one of the hardest things that you have to do in life, if you really love somebody, is to encourage them to leave, to encourage them to grow. Woo! And I can't believe how choked up I'm getting about this, because this just happened this morning, and I was laying in bed. And she's sound asleep, like sprawled out, like those 22-year-old sleep, and sweating, and, just like this. And I thought, I want to take a picture of this moment. And then I thought, no, she's going to kill me because she looks terrible. And you know how that rolls when you're 20 years old. And so I closed my eyes to just capture the memory. And I thought, why is it that I am always gripping onto the thing that makes me unhappy? What is it about this campaign? I call it the campaign of misery. Like, instead of focusing on the fact that here I am, first of all, lucky enough to be in Los Angeles, to be able to have the means to go see her for Parents Weekend, that I have a relationship with her where she would want to come and just snuggle up and spend the night, that she is pursuing her passion and dream of being a singer-songwriter, that she is just killing it. She's happy. Why am I always defaulting to the loss? Mm. And so when I say that I'm working on happiness, what I've realized about myself, Jay, is that I have done a lot of things in life, but I've spent the vast majority of my life being so busy and keeping myself so busy as a means to outrun, I think, a deep-seated unhappiness. Mm. And that when the pandemic hit and I had to slow down and I had to truly say to myself, okay, you can't go anywhere. You cannot regulate your anxiety by running to Target. You can't catch a plane. It's you and you and yourself right now, Mel. And all the coping mechanisms that you used to have that distracted you from the fact that you're just not that happy. Mm. They're not there anymore. And unless I want to drink myself into the ground, which I don't, and numb it, or hit the vape pen or take unless I want to numb it, I got to deal with it. And so I've spent the last 2 years, and I continue to focus right now on the number one goal that I have, which is to learn how to be happy and content wherever I am. And so this morning is the perfect example of catching this profound sadness, which is part of the human experience. Deeply missing somebody is also about loving them, right? And noticing that I was going into the negative. And part of being content and being happy wherever I am is not trying to fix things. It's being okay with things. It's allowing the emotion to rise up, and then noticing that there's a different way to feel. And so in that moment, I just am doing what I'm doing a lot of, which is just breathing through those deep moments where I'm like, why am I complaining about this? This is so stupid. Why am I obsessing about this thing tomorrow? And I'm not even here right now. And reframing things in a more positive way. And this might surprise people because I am a very positive person. I am a very optimistic person. But when I really slow down, my mind runs 1,000,000 miles an hour, and normally it's 15 steps ahead, which means I'm never content where I am. And so I've been doing a ton of work, like in my nervous system, in my body. Instead of going right up here and trying to wrestle with my thoughts, I've been going down into here to just anchor in my body and slow things down and be physically where I am, where my feet are. And so then there was a second thing that happened. So again, I'm working on happiness. That's the thing I'm really like working on. It's like a muscle, right? I'm in the bathroom and I am terrible at doing my hair. I know it looks really decent today, but normally I look like a frickin' labradoodle on a humid day. Like, that's just me. I just have never figured out the hair situation. And so I finally said, that's it. I have got to figure out how to make my hair look halfway okay. Like, I'm not even looking for amazing. I'm just looking for okay. And so I was watching YouTube. I'm learning the tutorials. I've got the right sprays. And so Kendall comes rolling in after she wakes up. And I am sitting there trying to curl my hair, right, with this big fat curling iron. I'm terrible at it, Jay. And all of a sudden, I hit my freaking ear, and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, oh my God, I've just burned my ear. And Kendall casually goes, well, you got to learn somehow. And she walks out of the room. I think there is so much wisdom in that, because that is how you learn. That is how you learn how close to hold a curling iron to your ear. You burn yourself. And then your whole body absorbs the lesson, and you don't go that close to the fire next time. And I'm doing that dance with happiness and contentment. That when I feel the fire of discontent or friction or complaining or looking for what's wrong, I pull the curling iron a little away from the ear. And I go back into a safer, calmer place.
That was a beautiful answer. I didn't know what to expect when I asked that question. I really appreciate you, going that inward with it, because you could have gone a number of ways. I fully understand and empathize what you're saying, because my mom and my family do something similar. So, and I love my mom. I have a great relationship with my mom. She's amazing. And anything that's good about me is because of her. But every time I go back to London, the day I land, my family will say, well, you're only here for 21 days. I'm like, 21 days? Like, that's 3 weeks. Even if you added up all the hours weekly that you spend with time with someone, it probably won't account for 21 full days with full presence. And then a week will go and be like, oh, you've only got 14 days left. Or you've only got 7 days left. Or you're leaving today. And that mindset just keeps forcing you to think that day 21 is day one.
Right.
As in that day 21 days left is the same as 1 day left. And you're living all 21 days as there's only 1 day left. And I've taken time, and I've sat with my mom so many times to have that conversation with her. And I said, Mom, if you celebrate that we have 21 days and we're going to make the most of it, and we're going to create new memories and create new experiences, then you're going to be happier for these 21 days. And yes, you're going to miss me the same. It's not going to change that. And I'm going to miss you. So I have personal experience of that on the other end of it, with having that conversation with my mom, where she's really grown in understanding how that thought hasn't served her.
Right.
And she's so much happier for it now when I go back. So that I definitely identify with that. What you touched on at the end there, though, was really interesting to me. When you talk about happiness, it sounds like you believe you deserve it, and you sound like you believe it's yours for the taking. Like, it's like it is a clear goal, direction, it's there.
Yeah.
And I think what's happened is, subconsciously or consciously, so many of us don't feel we deserve happiness, or we don't feel we're worthy of happiness, Or we actually think mediocrity is a safer place to live because then we don't have our expectations being unmet. We don't have the fall of, I wanted this, but I got this.
Right.
And so I had a friend the other day who sent me a message and he said, take a look at this. And it was all about how really we shouldn't strive for happiness. We should strive for mediocrity because mediocrity is where most people will end up. So that was
that
the
sucks.
literally, this is the message. So my friend messaged me. He goes, "What do you think of this?"
I think it sucks. That's what Mel Robbins thinks. I think it's the worst advice I've ever freaking heard. How about that? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Here's the thing, Jay. So one of the things I also wanted to say is that I'm 54, and it's taken me a long time to figure out that I was actually not a happy person. And I don't think I really truly understood what happiness is. And maybe I'm using the wrong word. Maybe the word is the problem, because I always associated happiness with like parties and laughter and like I'm just like full of joy and I just, it's like this very positive thing. And again, I am a positive person. I'm a very optimistic person. But if you were to put a speaker on my head and broadcast the things I said to myself, you would literally check me in to the 7th floor at Mass General Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts, because it was a constant drumbeat of negativity. And as I, one by one, Jay, started to fix the problems in my marriage and my finances, with my anxiety, as I built a business, a lot of people are surprised to learn that most of what you see that I've built has been built in the last 6 years, literally. And so as I started fixing things outside, that default drumbeat did not go away. It just was a situation where I no longer had anything outside of me that was rationally wrong. So I turned it back on me and just started hammering me in crazy ways. I'll give you an example. So this is where I started to have this breakthrough. So I was sitting, my husband and I have just bought a house in Vermont. And I know you guys, are in your new home. It's an incredible thing to do. It is our dream house. It's the house that his parents built. It's the family house. We not only were able to purchase this thing, we have been able to completely renovate it, make it our own. This place is the closest place to God that I have ever been. We sit nestled between mountains with a 140-mile view straight down a valley with cascading. Like, it is just spectacular. When I would sit in therapy sessions 8 years ago, and my therapist would ask me to come up with like a, like a totem or a spiritual guide or a vision, whatever, for truth or God or whatever, it's always this view. And so lo and behold, 8 years later, we freaking live there. And I'm sitting on this covered deck looking down the valley. My daughter is sitting next to me, our other daughter who lives in Boston, who's 23, and it's Sunday. And normally on Sundays, I'm not even present on Sundays because I'm now got the Sunday scaries. I'm now thinking about the week ahead. She is starting to now do that. Okay, I got to get going. I got to pack the car. I got to get going. I got a big week at work this week. And it's 7:30 in the morning on a spectacular day. And the energy is starting. And I recognize the energy because that is the campaign of misery that I have lived with for 50 years. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, oh, this is interesting. That's me. And then I stopped in that moment, Jay, and I thought, I don't feel that right now. I just feel that exactly where I am, looking at this view, is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And it was so profound. It's almost like that moment where Eckhart Tolle has on the bench in the beginning of The Power of Now, where I have this profound experience where I think, wait a minute, is this what happiness is? That I'm not 15 steps ahead? I'm just able to be right here without the anxiety, without the stress. I mean, that is like a revolutionary experience for me. I don't think I had ever not felt the default of a revved up nervous system, an anxious mind, or a to-do list that was a mile long. And I don't want to go back to that sort of frenetic busyness that creates chronic stress. And, the challenge for me right now is how do I stay in a space that's happy? Because I love the game of building a business. I love pushing myself. I love and I realized, oh, wait, you actually need both. You need deep spiritual quiet time, and you need the busyness of Los Angeles or Boston or New York in small sprints. But that can't be your default anymore, woman.
And that's such a great realization and reflection, I think, when you come to that. And it takes a lot of self-acceptance to come to that, because I think we think of life as binary, like you have to make a choice. You're either going to be a hustler or you're going to be peaceful. You're either going to be a winner or you're going to be a loser. You're either going to be wisdom and Zen or you're going to be money and materialistic, right? And it's almost like you feel you have to make those choices early in life. And I think when you came in here, we were talking about something, and I really, really think it's something that a lot of our listeners will resonate with. The idea that so many of us experience pain of not going after what we want or what we need or what we feel is our calling because of the pain that comes with that.
Yeah.
And so we settle for the pain of where we are.
Yeah.
And I think those two ideas are related because, again, we think there's this choice you have to make at any point in time where it's like, I'm either going to live the life of my dreams or I'm going to be stuck forever. And then we're like, okay, well, I'll be stuck forever because my dreams seem so far away. I remember being there, and it's always hard to help everyone who's listening realize how much I felt that way.
So how old were you?
This was 6 years ago for me.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's right. You have this crazy parallel path.
Yeah, 6 years ago. So 6 years ago, I was working a safe corporate job. 6 months from now, I was about to be married to Radhi, and I was making £31,500 a year. And that was my salary at this company. And I was doing extremely well at the company, so I had a good track to progress there. And I'm sitting there going, I've been there for 2 years, and I'm like, I don't think this is where I'm meant to be. I was looking at people who'd been at the company for decades. I've always said to people, look 10, 20 years ahead of you and look at that person in a company and go, is that where I want to be? And I was like, well, even if they paid me as much as that person's paid, even if I got all the benefits that person got, I don't think I want to do that in my 50s. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, then I have to take a risk. So, and obviously that was like a 2-year journey of even convincing myself. Let's talk about that. If someone's sitting there right now, passionate about something, wanting to get inspired, wanting to do something, but they're settling for the pain of where they are. And that's why I asked that mediocrity and happiness question.
Yeah.
It is really that dance between I'm going to settle for where I'm at or I'm going to be where I want to be. How do you think about that journey? How do you start?
You know what just popped into my mind in a weird way? Cancer. If you got diagnosed with a cancer that was treatable, would you try to treat your cancer?
Yes.
Of course you would. Because otherwise it would kill you. When you feel this call or this burning desire, and I feel like we all have this flame inside of us. We are not like a boiler where the pilot light can blow out. That is not how a human being is wired. You, whether you're stuck, whether you're in pain, whether you're suffering, you still have this flame inside you that is burning. And when you actively engage in your own campaign of misery and you actively tell yourself the reasons why it's not going to work, or the reasons why you can't do it, or the reasons why now is not the time, or you're never going to make it happen, or it was great for Jay or great for Mel, but nothing ever works out for. When you engage in your own campaign of misery, you are creating literally a cancer inside of you that eats at you. And we don't realize that by engaging in this campaign of misery, because it's active, that flame is burning inside you and you are actively convincing yourself not to do anything. It is an active engaged. That's why I call it a campaign, because that flame is going to keep on burning, which is why the campaign has to get louder and the excuses have to get louder. And you know what starts to happen is you start to listen to that campaign and you start to feel pain because there's something burning inside of you. And the only cure for this is to stop listening to that campaign and simply start taking small steps, just one every day toward the thing that you want. I talk to my daughter about this all the time. So she dreams, absolutely dreams, of being a singer-songwriter, solo artist with a successful career, literally stadium tours. And if I'm being perfectly honest, this kid has all of the talent and all of the, like, she's one of those 5-tool players, and she is a great person, kind, and just awesome. And she's even in a program for it, the best in the country. She has everything. She just has to do the work. What is the work? Well, the work is simply writing crappy songs every day. The work is not listening to the campaign of misery, because all around you, you're going to see evidence of this person's better, or that person this, or this one's that, or there. When you listen to that campaign in your head, it is like a cancer inside. It causes pain because you can feel when you are giving up on your own potential. And that is the worst kind of life to live.
And we're all, I remember I was the president of that campaign in my own life. Like, you know, I was like, when you, and I want people to understand this, is that everyone you think is doing something good with their life, at one point they were the presidents of this campaign of misery in their own life. I remember saying, well, that never's going to happen for me. Those things only happen to those people. I remember also watching things, and this was the key one that I realized had to go. Me and my friends, and my dream when I was young was to be a spoken word rap artist. Like, that was my goal. Like, I've always loved words. I've always loved having a large vocabulary. I've always loved bending words and making them rhyme. And I think that's why I love words today. And what we do so much is that. And we would sit there and we would watch rappers or artists that were up and coming, and we would critique them, and we would almost talk badly about them. We would criticize them, and we'd talk about how rubbish they were and how untalented they were, and if we had those opportunities, how good we'd be. And I realized that today's culture is propagating that even more, because now we're just scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, and you'll see someone who's doing what you want to do, and you may think you can do it better. But instead of doing it, we're spending our time watching someone else doing it and going, well, that sucks, that's rubbish.
Right.
I actually have friends who message me stuff like that sometimes, and they'll be like, look, you know, I've been wanting to make videos for a while, and they'll send me someone who's made a bad video in their opinion. And I said, you know what's really interesting? When you're on social media, you look at everyone who's doing worse than you. I said, when I'm on social media, I look at everyone who's doing better than me and learn, right? It's like, there's those two mindsets. You're either criticizing someone, or you're creating and learning and growing. And so I just feel what you're saying is so true. And I think I spent so much time thinking I had something, but then not doing anything with it.
Yeah. So a couple things. I want to give everybody a visual.
Yes.
Because I find Jay's into words, I got to have a picture. Like, my mind is not the words mind. You are either in the stands commenting about the game, or you're on the court playing it. And right now, I want you to think about that flame inside you, that dream that you have. And I'm going to go back to my daughter, who is on the court, but she will be the first to say that for many years, she was engaged in her own campaign of misery, sitting in the stands, telling herself why she can't get on the court right now. And so I like that visual, because at any moment, it literally like cuts right to the truth. Are you in the stands criticizing the people who are playing the game, or being jealous of them, or in the stands telling yourself it's not time to jump in, or are you on the freaking court? There's only two places to be in life. That's it. There is no middle ground here. And so what I want to say also is that being in the stands, it is loud. It is an active thing that you're doing. This is not a passive thing that we do to ourselves. We actively argue against our dream and our potential. And that is 1,000% tied to your happiness, to your confidence, because if you are arguing against your own God-given potential, you are actively destroying your confidence. You're actively destroying possibility in your life. And here's the thing, you freaking know it.
Yeah.
People know when they have imposter syndrome. They know it. They talk about it openly. And I also hate the term fake it till you make it. And here's why. When you say, I'm just going to fake it till you make it, you are calling yourself a fake. It amplifies your self-doubt. Instead, say this, I'm going to get on the court and try until I make it. Because the pain of sitting in the stands and never getting down there is way greater than tripping on the court. Way greater. You're causing and this is the thing I want people to understand. You are causing yourself so much pain by laughing off and making jokes about how it's never going to happen. You are causing yourself so much pain by thinking about it. Get out of the freaking stands and get back on the court in your life. I did this to myself for years about the podcast. You know, I'll tell you some insane stories. So here I am, crazy successful in the audiobook world. The most successful self-published audiobook in the history of audiobooks is The 5-Second Rule. That leads to a 7-book Audible original deals with Audible because of the success of that. And I kept telling myself, Jay, I'd look at you, you know, and I'd look at a ton of our other friends who, you know, have these amazing podcasts, you, Rich Roll, like, you know, just everybody. And I'd be like, I missed the boat. I'm too late. There's 2 million podcasts out there now. I can't do this. I don't have anything different to say than Jay. Jay's already got, you know, it covered. Like, why would I jump in there now? And then I would in the stands for 6 years. And you know what else I would tell myself? Well, you're just successful because Audible's your partner. And if you were to try this, you're going to fall flat on your face. And you don't have time. And here's another thing that I tell myself. Well, who on earth is going to come to Boston to sit in a studio with you, Mel? Everybody's remote now. Boston is not a media place. Nobody travels there. Like, just in the freaking stands, telling myself, no, no, no. Now, here's the thing about campaigns of misery. It does not actually mute the heartache and the pull that you have, because your dreams actually can't leave you. They're meant for you. And so all that campaigning or the drinking or the numbing out or the avoiding the thing that is inside you, it doesn't make the dream go away. It just creates more pain. And so finally, you know, it was 2 years ago that I'm like, I have to like take my own advice. And I got to make some major changes, because I knew when I was going to step into the podcast space that I was going to make it the only thing that I was doing, that I needed to complete all the speaking engagements that I had. I needed to create different boundaries around, like I had to get serious about taking the steps and getting on that court. And that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. And a lot of people don't know that I actually got my start in 2007 hosting a local radio show. And I have wanted to get back to radio for almost 12 years because I love the intimacy of it. And so, and I can't, like, you know this, you can't share your life in real time in an audiobook.
No, definitely not.
You can't do it in a 60-second reel. But I, too, sat there in the stands, actively engaged in my campaign of misery. Here's another area of my life where I engaged in campaign of misery: loneliness. I have been profoundly lonely for a while now. And by lonely, I don't mean alone, because there's people around me. But I have, and I think a lot of people feel this way, and I know a lot of women do, particularly when your kids get older and the social, you know, like things change. And I think a lot of us are struggling with adult friendship. And especially coming out of quarantine, people are now kind of, I don't want to leave my house, not because of anything going on, but because I like being home.
Yeah.
And so I started to get serious about the fact that I was really in the stands in my life, complaining to myself that I didn't see my friends, that I don't have friends, that I'm really lonely, but I wasn't on the court. What are you going to do about it? Because it's easy to actually start making friends if you send texts every day to people and you make plans.
Yeah.
Oh, Jay's in Montreal. Why don't I text him? Yeah. Oh, he's in the same hotel. Why don't I go up 7 floors and go see him? Because my monk is in the penthouse. You know what I'm saying?
I love what you're saying. I can resonate with it so much. And there's a journey from, as
Where's your campaign of misery right now?
Oh, that's a great question. Where's my current campaign of misery?
Where are you in the stands in your life, Jay?
Mine is actually, I grew up loving, I went to public speaking and drama school, and public speaking became a huge part of my life, and drama stopped. And drama is something I'd love to get back into.
Really?
I loved acting growing up. I loved the idea of getting into someone else's emotions, and I loved the idea of learning about new characters and understanding. And I keep wanting to do it. And 3 years ago, when the Bad Boys movie came out, I was asked by Sony to be in their theatrical trailer for TV. And so I played the role of a therapist with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. And I had so much, it was so uncomfortable because I hadn't done it for so long. I went to drama school for 7 years. It was so uncomfortable doing it. And I got an acting coach that week, and I practiced and I learned all my lines. And then I got there on the day and they gave me a new script. They said, the script's changed. And I'm going, guys, I had 5 days. I knew about this 5 days ago. I had an acting coach every day for 2 hours a day. And they give me a new script. Then they come in 10 minutes before. I've been waiting around for 2 hours learning this new script. We get there and they say, oh, by the way, Will and Martin have scrapped the script. There's no more script. They're just going to freestyle, and you're going to have to freestyle. I'm like, you want me to freestyle with two of the greatest to ever do it? And I'm not a comedian.
Now, were you friends with Will at this point?
Not in the way we are today.
Okay, so like, because I think people might be like, yeah, but you guys are friends. So you're like, but this is like today. Not a friend of mine.
Yeah, we were acquaintances, but not,
Got it.
not
okay,
in the
good.
relationship
I
we
think
have
that's
today.
important.
Yeah, and I didn't know Martin at all. I'd never met him in my life. And so I am fully feeling imposter syndrome. I'm fully in my discomfort zone. And I had the most fun.
You're on the court.
Yeah, I was on the court and I had fun. But then since that day, I retreated. and so that's been, if I'm completely honest, that's where my heart is. I love the idea of getting to be, I've always loved biographies, and I've always loved autobiographies. I've always loved true stories. And so if I had the opportunity to learn or play or be in a true story, that would fill my heart with a lot of joy.
Is there somebody that you would dream of playing?
No, I don't have that. That answer I don't have clear. But yeah, that would be my honest answer to that question, of that's something I'm in the stands on. There's so many excuses. I'm like, well, Jay, if you did that, then it discredits all the work you've done up till now. Well, Jay, if you did that and it doesn't work out, then what about the people that you coach in that industry? Like, if you did it and you did it really well, then people will call you a sellout because you chose to do something completely different. And it's not saying I want to do that and stop doing what I do today. It's just that there's a part of that expression that I'm so creatively inspired by that I'd like to try.
Yeah.
And again, it's try, right? It's not, and I wanted to get, so that's what I want to talk to you about. It's, what was the heart of my question before? And I'm so glad you asked me that. Thank you. I've never publicly talked about that. I've never shared that really with anyone beyond my wife. What is the difference? Because I think this is where it goes wrong. I meet a lot of people who talk to me about their dreams, and even mine, and I want to clarify mine in a second, the one I just shared with you. What is the difference between a dream and delusion? And I'm going to share my initial thoughts before I hear yours. When I say I would like to do more drama or acting or experiment with that phase of my life, my dream is not at this point in time to win an Oscar. My dream is to try to creatively express myself and see whether this vehicle is a form that brings me joy, happiness, and meaning in my life.
Yeah. That
to me is not delusional, because it is giving myself the opportunity to put my, using visuals, like put my, what are they called? Stabilizers onto my bike and see if this is real.
Right.
I often find people whose first dream is, I want to build $1 billion company, and they've never built a business at all, or have business experience. Or I hear, I want this to be the number one thing in the world. And while those are nice aspirations, I'm not sure that, I actually think, and this is just my personal take, I never had those when I started. And I feel that sometimes without the skills, without doing the learning, without doing the experimenting, those things can actually stop you from doing it because it's so hard, it's so far away, and there's such a big way to fall. So I want to understand, how do you decipher between dream and delusion?
When you talk about delusion, what I hear is like arrogance and conceitedness. Now, and let me explain the difference here. Because I think confidence is this willingness to try, and this belief in yourself and what you're trying to do, right? I think arrogance And conceitedness is thinking you're better than everybody else.
Yep.
And so when you frame the delusion as this grandiose thing, it feels like it's coming from insecurity.
Right.
It feels like it's coming from wanting to be better than, versus coming from a place where you're willing to take the risks and try and get on the court of life in a way that's aligned with this thing inside you. And so that's what I process in my own brain when you ask me the question, what's the difference between dreams and delusions?
Yeah.
Now, if you have a true dream, is it ever delusional? And my answer to that is never. And here's why. I believe that dreams are not meant to be achieved. I believe that your dreams are a directional signal. That the dream is out there in a different chapter of your life, calling you from this moment toward that direction. And that the reason why you still have this burning flame inside you that relates all the way back to something that you did when you were younger that you frickin' loved is because when you walk toward acting and what that requires of you to get on the court and walk toward that dream. And look, the dream could be an Oscar. The dream could be something like that's an award. It doesn't matter. It's in the lane of acting. What I believe about dreams is that the dreams are deeply personal. They are connected to that flame inside you. You are hardwired with them when you were born. It is absolutely part of why you're curious about things, why you're interested in things naturally. This is part of your natural intelligence. And that when you get on the court and you start walking toward them, that is what's supposed to happen. Because if you allow yourself to take on some roles in acting, it's going to make something come alive inside of you. That's the purpose of your dreams. It's to make that flame burn brighter inside of you. It's about you awakening something, and your dreams are the directional signal that are trying to point you in what way to move forward. Going back to my daughter, will she ever have a stadium tour? I don't freaking know. She might. That's not the point. The point is to have something come alive inside herself by getting on the court of her life and writing music and putting it out there.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, happens. The reason why I wanted to launch the Mel Robbins podcast is not so that it could become the #1 podcast in the world. Of course I have those goals. Of course I want to be the #1 female podcast host in the world. Of course that's what I want. But the reason why I am pursuing this is because I wanted to connect with people at a deeper level. I knew that I would come creatively alive. I knew that I wanted to build an ongoing conversation that was deeper. And I also knew I wanted to learn more, because when you're constantly putting out content, or you're standing on stages, or you're writing books, it's kind of a one-way conversation.
Yeah.
And so part of my solve for loneliness was to stop griping about it to myself and to go, well, what would actually make me feel more connected? What would be of more service to people? What would create a deeper impact? That's why I'm doing this thing.
Yeah. That's what I'm getting at. That the clarity, and the reason why I really want to get this really clear for people is that I had a friend last night I was talking to, and they want to start a podcast, and it was the most beautiful intention, right? Everyone wants to start a podcast today. Everyone wants to start anything today.
And they
right?
should.
It's very and they should. But what I've learned is that anything I've started intentionally has not only more likely brought out the consistency and creativity for me, it's not only been successful, it's also made me happy. And so what I'm trying to get to is, how do you plant a seed that goes all the way from not only growing consistently to giving you joy as it grows, to then giving you that flower, to then giving you that fruit, to then giving you the seed to do more, rather than like, I got the flower, we then cut it, it then broke. And, so when I look at it, I go, I think a lot of people are so obsessed with the result that all they get might be the result. And then you have nothing else. And then that result feels dissatisfying. It's like when we had Gwyneth Paltrow on the podcast, she talked about how like winning an Oscar in her teens, like removed all aspiration, because she goes, well, what do you do next, right? Like when you've done that, you've done the epitome, the peak of that career in your teens. And now it's like, well, what do you do next? And it's like, well, if it was only about the result, not speaking about her, but if it was only about the result, then you stop. And so I just want to clarify that what you just said is you started it not to be number one. You started it because of the impact you wanted to make, the stories you wanted to tell,
Totally.
the connection with your audience. And I think if people leaned more into that, to me, that's the real dream.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. I keep bringing up my daughter because she's an artist.
Yeah.
And when she leans into the fact that she's not trying to impress her friends in her pop music program, she's not trying to impress anybody.
Yeah.
She wants to tell stories with her music that inspire people.
Yeah.
And when you really get into the reason why you're doing something. So I'm going to give everybody another visual because there are two visuals that I think about a lot in life. For me, one of the most powerful things that I use to coach myself is that when I'm in the middle of something, I always remind myself I'm on the bridge. So in launching this podcast, something I've been thinking about for more than 8 years, something I've talked myself out of for a long time, something that I finally stepped on the court and started working for about 2 years ago. And now we're here. I know that this is literally step one on a long suspension bridge that is leading me somewhere. And when you remind yourself that you're just on the bridge, you stop focusing on how long is it going to take and what's it going to feel like. And I'm not there yet. You are on the bridge and you are going to be on the bridge until you get to this other side. And then guess what happens when you get to the other side? There's another freaking bridge.
Yeah.
Every single episode is like its own bridge.
Yeah.
The other visual that I use a lot is a trail leading up a mountain. Because the research is so conclusive, and Jay and I can try to beat it into your head, that meaning comes from working on something. I'm going to say it again. Meaning comes from working on something with intention that has importance to you. It's that simple. You can create meaning in your life by planting a garden if it's important to you. And for me, I think a lot about, the act of going for a hike. The purpose of going for a hike, ironically, is not to get to the top. It's to be on the trail. And if you constantly stare at the top, you're going to be out of breath. You're going to tell yourself you have so much longer. When are we ever going to get there? And you are going to miss the entire point of your freaking life, which is the ride, the trail, the bridge, the mile markers, all of it. And so part of my desire to be happier is to continually remind myself, it is not about getting on that mountain, because when you get to the top of that mountain, the top of one mountain's just the bottom of another one. And if you're going up, eventually you got to come back down. Like, that is just life. If you focus on the freaking trail, whatever step you're on, and you keep reminding yourself, this is going to lead me somewhere, that is where the meaning comes in your life. Because Jay and I will both tell you guys that you put all this effort into writing a book, it publishes, you're like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
And we want it to be something else. We want to think that there is this silver bullet that if you get to the mountain, if you launch the podcast, if you meet the person of your dreams, then you'll be happy. And the truth is, for me personally, happiness was really about ending campaigns of misery in my mind. It was about identifying where I was arguing against myself and my potential. And it was allowing myself to get back on the trail or start walking across that bridge.
Yeah, that's I love those visuals. They're so powerful and so beautiful. And when you said the bridge one, it reminded me of, I believe this is from the Christian tradition. I believe it's from the Bible, but the statement says, the world is like a bridge. Don't build your house on it, cross over it. And I've always spiritually gravitated towards that statement very deeply. So when you said bridge, that was the first thing that came to my mind. The world is like a bridge.
I also like that term. A couple reasons. So, I was telling everybody earlier about how I woke up this morning and I'm here visiting my daughter who's 22 and a senior in college. And I felt this profound sadness. And I noticed it. And I allowed myself to feel it because I wouldn't feel that if I didn't love her so deeply. right? And then I visualize this bridge, that this is just one step on a very long bridge that I'm crossing. And a bridge that, as a parent, like, the most important thing that I need to do as a parent is to encourage my children to fly into this world and to leave and to become who they're meant to become, which means they're going to leave. And there are a lot of goodbyes, and it sucks, but it's also beautiful. And I also love this idea of a bridge, because when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to separation, there is this concept when you say goodbye to somebody, or when you're about to leave somebody who's going to do something anxious, is you bridge that moment to the next moment you're going to see them. So I'm sure you do this when you say goodbye to your parents in the UK. You hug and say, I can't, for me, I just said, I can't wait to see you on Thanksgiving break. I can't wait to hear how this thing goes tomorrow, so that you are staying connected and bridging and closing that kind of loop of something's ending, because things are not truly really ending.
Yeah.
They're always beginnings to something else.
Yeah. One of the questions we get in my DMs a lot and comments and everything is, and I think people subconsciously or consciously have this as well, the idea that, and you just brought it about, is your parents' expectations. So either some people had parents who had very high expectations or different expectations to what the kids wanted. Like, you're very aware that what your daughter wants to be, and you're happy to support it as long as she wants to be it. Some people have the experience of, well, my parents had very high expectations, but they're not the expectations I want. Or my parents actually didn't have any expectations of me, and they were actually more negative, and they actually didn't believe in me at all and didn't really think I'd get anywhere anyway. Or when I want to try something, I get the toxic feedback of, well, you're not going to make it anyway. So I think we deal with parenting and a feeling of not believing in ourselves in two ways. One is your parents saw the path, they gave you it, but you're like, that's not my path, this is, and then your parents don't believe in it. Or your parents never believed in any path you were to take. And I think a lot of people I'm hearing right now are feeling like, Jay, I'm just surrounded by family and friends who don't believe in me, don't believe in my ideas, don't believe in the partner I want to be with. Like, I just don't feel like people support my decisions.
Yeah. Chris and I have been married 26 years. We have 3 kids. They're 23, 22, and 17. There is no doubt in my mind I've screwed them up. How could you not?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about millions of moments where somebody needs emotional support, and you are a mismatch in that moment, right? And I love this term of parental mismatch, because it allows those of us that still have a good relationship with our parents to acknowledge a fact. And the fact is, there are things that went down in your childhood that you may not even remember, that left you with negative or toxic thinking patterns that you struggle to get rid of as an adult. It is a fact, period. And so I want to start off by saying that, because we all deal with this, and it is a result of childhood. In fact, Dr. Russell Kennedy, who is amazing, you should have him on your podcast, says that all anxiety results from a feeling of separation from your parents when you're a kid, probably before you were 5. A moment where you felt separate, there was a mismatch. Maybe you were sitting on the floor, you don't even remember this, you're quietly playing, you're in a happy space, and mom or dad comes home and they're frustrated. And all of a sudden they, like everybody does at some point, because everybody has a volcano moment. It's a fact. And it startles you as a kid. Your body remembers that. And there's this concept in research called ghosts in the nursery, that a lot of us struggle as adults with behavior that we're like, where did that come from? And where it comes from is the fact that if you're now an adult and you had an experience growing up in a household where your parents raged, or your parents were abusive, or your parents just ignored you, and you just felt separate or on edge, when you get into those same situations as an adult, your body has a feeling first. We think first. We don't. Your body has the feeling first. And then your body repeats the behavior that you actually observed as a kid. I speak English because I observed and absorbed the language my parents spoke. And so there are patterns that you're struggling with that do not serve you as an adult that are not your own.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to say that first and foremost, okay? That one of the greatest gifts of being an adult is separating from your parents and deciding how you want to talk to yourself, how you want to change the way that you think, how you speak, how you support. So that's number one. Number two, it is so common and natural to feel this kind of complex mix of guilt and of pressure to want to please your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because you needed them to survive as a kid. It's not like you could leave. And what we learn as kids is that there is a give and a take, and that oftentimes that love that you need and that support that you need is very transactional. That mom and dad are in a great mood and you get a lot of attention when you're doing well in sports or doing well in school or you're doing what they want them to do. And what we women learn in particular is that if you're not doing what I want you to do, that's bad. Because guilt, by definition, is feeling bad about what you just did. We learned that feeling during childhood, and it happens to everybody. And so I want to just say this because I want to normalize that these are things that don't mean that you're damaged.
Mm-hmm.
It's stuff that we have to heal for ourselves as adults. And so here's rule number one. If your parents or your family are not paying your bills, they have no vote. If your parents are paying for your bills, there is going to be power in what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
There is a transaction there because they're paying your tuition or they're paying whatever, and not all parents are transformed. And so I'm saying that because one of the fastest ways to free yourself is to pay your own way. And when you pay your own way, you start to feel very empowered to pave your own way. I happen to believe as a parent that my job is to help my kids figure out who they are. And you do that by listening. You do that by validating their experiences. You do that by not seeing them as an extension of you, that what school they get into somehow means that you're a good parent or a bad parent. The best thing that you could do for your kids is figure out what's going to make them happy and support them in doing that. And the other thing that you can do is help them make decisions by helping them figure out what decisions are right for them. So I'm saying all of this because 0 to 18, so let's use another metaphor, because I, again, love metaphors. Life's one big road trip, okay? Every year of your life is a mile marker. From 0 to 18, you're not even driving the damn car. Somebody else is. You're in somebody else's car. They're telling you what to do. They're controlling what's happening. The second you get to university or you leave home, you get to navigate your own life, but not if somebody else is paying for it.
Yeah. I think that perspective is empowering if you're willing to take that risk. But what we found, you know, the research shows this as well. There was a study a few years ago that I looked at which talked about how, you know, with men and women, when men see a job description and they can do like 50 to 60% of it,
it's an HP study.
They'll say, I can do it.
Right.
And then when a woman sees a job description, and even if she can do 80% of it, she'll be like, I can't apply because I can't do 20%. And so I find that there's
we do it in dating too, by the way.
Right. So yeah. So that disproportionate self-doubt that comes in there, or that lack of self-confidence, as someone who's a mom of girls, like, do you see that playing out differently for you and for them? And
so there's a tremendous amount of research on this with girls and confidence. And I have a theory as to what happens. And I know what age it happens at, typically for girls, because girls struggle with crippling perfectionism in numbers that far outweigh what happens to boys. And I believe there is a specific reason why. So at the age of 12, boys and girls have the exact same levels of confidence, Jay. At the age of 13, girls' confidence fall off a cliff, according to the research. And I think I know why. The reason why, in my personal opinion, is because that is the average age that a girl goes through puberty and she starts menstruating. Now, here's the interesting thing about girls when they go through puberty. It's like a public conversation. And what's the first thing that somebody says to a little girl when they get their period? You're a woman now. And it's also something that happens to your body. So there's this like implied maturing, this implied notion of sex. There's also the fact that your boobs are growing and you're budding and people are self-conscious. And so now you're wearing a sweatshirt. You also know who's got their period. Somehow everybody knows when this is happening. Everybody's talking about it. And so you, in that moment, lose the control of the conversation about your body. And for most girls, it's incredibly uncomfortable. Like I remember one of my daughters wore like a gigantic sweatshirt for 2 years just to hide her developing body. Other girls might show it off because you get more attention. But it becomes this public conversation about where you are in relation to everybody else. And most girls, in addition to the socialization that you get from the media and from culture, you start then wishing you look different. You start to obsess about yourself. If I could just get it perfect. If I wear the perfect sweatshirt, then nobody's going to notice. And you start micromanaging as a defense mechanism to public judgment. That's what I think happens because the perfectionism is off the charts too. When you dudes get hit puberty, it's typically when you're 15 and it benefits you. I mean, because we're not talking about what's happening with your balls, right? It's not like some conversation about that. We're talking about the fact that your voice is deeper. You've gotten taller. It benefits you in high school sports. And so it doesn't impact your guys' confidence. It actually helps you. And that's where it begins, in my personal opinion, along with the fact that there's so much that happens generationally where boys are encouraged to take risks. Boys are in sports where they're knocked around. Boys are picked up and shoved back in the game. Girls are coddled a little bit more and told to be a good girl, be a nice sister, go hug your uncle, all those things that send a message that leads to women struggling with confidence.
What do you think then are some of the things that you did later on and you want for your daughters to do to develop better confidence? Like what are some of those steps towards better confidence? Because I think it's so difficult, right? Confidence requires you to do so many things you don't want to do to develop it.
Yeah.
Like I think the problem with the word confidence, when I look it up in the dictionary, it's one of my favorite definitions of a word. One of the definitions is acknowledgement and self-assurance in one's own abilities, right? Like you're acknowledging and you are aware of and you're reassured of your own abilities and your qualities. And so when I look at that definition, I go, okay, that requires you to do things that, like you don't build your self-respect when you sat out on the beach. But you do build your self-respect when you went and hiked up a hill and then walked back down, right? Like your self-confidence doesn't grow because you sat out in your garden and didn't do anything. Your self-confidence grew because you learned how to garden or do something, right? Your self-respect, self-esteem, and self-confidence grow when you do things that are not obvious or easy or simple.
Right.
But like you're saying, we're not trained in that way. So what are some of the steps that people could take towards self-confidence?
Yeah. First, here's what I want to tell you, and then I'll give you some steps. So confidence is one of those topics, Jay, that we have backwards. Everybody hears the word confidence and they think it's belief, like up here.
Yeah, I agree.
Confidence, my definition of confidence that I want everyone to walk away with is confidence is the willingness to try. In research, there is something called the confidence competency loop. And what that means is that as you try something for the first time, like I was curling my hair this morning and I freaking burned my ear. And my daughter casually says, gotta learn somehow. By trying, and by the way, screwing it up and burning my ear, I still am gaining a little bit of competence. I know to hold this thing a little bit further away from my ear now. By gaining competence by burning my ear, I now am going to try again, and I'm going to be a little bit better. And I'm going to gain a little bit more competence, and then I'm going to try again, and I'm going to learn even more. And so confidence, at the heart of confidence is action. It's the willingness to try. And all you need is to know that if you try, you're not going to die. You're just going to learn something. And when you learn something, it removes a little bit of the insecurity so that it makes it slightly easier to try again. And so I would follow the 60% rule, okay? And I use 60% because that is the figure that was in the HP study about men applying for jobs when they feel 60% qualified. If you look at something that you want to do or try or apply for, and you feel, whether it's 60% qualified. Okay, I got 60% of the stuff, because the truth is, a job description, everybody, a dating profile, that is not requirements. That's a wish list, okay? If you got 60% of this stuff, freaking go for it. That's rule number one, the 60% rule. The other thing is that if you're looking at doing something that you're scared to do, maybe it's signing up for an improv class. Maybe it is ordering the podcast equipment. Maybe it's signing up for Genius. Like, you've been thinking about it. If you, on a scale, you're on this teeter-totter, if you tip more toward I'd really like to, so about 60%, right, wait, versus 40% I'm kind of nervous, freaking do it. That's how you build confidence. Because back to the original thing that we're talking about, self-doubt grows when you engage in negative talk to talk yourself out of the things you want to be trying. There is so much pain, Jay, in talking yourself out of trying things. And it just makes me so sad and frustrated to see so many of you that are listening, wasting years of your life, really feeling this desire to try something and putting all your energy into talking yourself out of it. Here's something that I just recorded an episode about this, and it's the fall. So I'm thinking a lot about the fact that, in the fall season, at least in New England, and I realize in other areas of the world, it's not the fall right now, the leaves fall off the tree, right? Here's an interesting fact. This is not a beautiful, graceful thing that happens. The tree pushes those frickers off its branches as an act of survival, because leaves have a huge surface area and they require a lot of water to be able to capture the sun and convert it into energy for the tree. And over winter, there ain't no water. And if those trees are there, the leaves are there, the tree's going to die. And it's an energy conserver. It is an energy issue. You are putting so much negative energy into things that you won't let go of, into complaining, into relationships that don't work, into your excuses. Do you know how much energy it takes to walk into a job you can't stand? And yet you do it every day. Imagine if, instead of sitting at your desk resisting, complaining, gossiping, and coming up with excuses, imagine if you just redirected some of that energy toward looking for something else. That, like the leaves get pushed off a tree, you make a decision that today I am actually going to let go of the gossiping and complaining about this, because that is zapping my energy. And I'm going to direct my energy at something positive, because once I get rid of that, I got room for something positive to grow. Mm-hmm. And complaining to yourself and robbing yourself of just trying something.
Yeah.
And we don't think about it that way.
Yeah. It takes the same amount of energy.
I think more.
Yeah, more potentially. It definitely, it's more draining. But it is, if anyone wants to think about it, it's that same energy just put in a different direction could change the course.
It does change the course.
Yeah, and it just needs to try. I love that willingness to try.
So the 60% rule, there's one takeaway on confidence, okay? The second thing that you can do with confidence, because it's action-based, this is where the 5-second rule is a game changer. Just use my 5-second rule literally in those moments where you feel self-doubt kick in. You got to be careful, because you have a habit of hesitating. You have a habit of doing what psychologists say. You have a bias towards thinking. And so a second takeaway is use my 5-second rule. And when you catch yourself hesitating, when you catch the self-doubt coming in, when you catch the feelings and the excuses rise up, count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And by the time you get to 1, the prefrontal cortex will have focused on the counting, and you've got literally a split second to move. And the trick about this is when you start counting, you've made a decision to try. And the counting itself is like a Trojan horse, because it's the first action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that rule. And the book's there too, in case anyone needs all the added information. I think our last interview was all about that. So I want to ask you about one final area of thought, because we were talking about it before. And I think a lot of our community does it. I have to ask it because I just wrote a book called 8 Rules of Love, which is out next year. And I talk about this in one of the chapters, so I'd love to hear your perspective on it. But the idea where you've been married for 26 years, right? Congratulations, that's incredible. And that's beautiful. In that time, you and your partner are going to go through different stages of personal growth, personal evolution, collective growth, collective evolution. Sometimes you're going to feel ahead, they're going to feel behind. Sometimes they're going to feel ahead, you're going to feel behind. Sometimes it's not even about ahead or behind. The question I have is, if someone's listening and their partner, or even if they're not in a relationship, their friend, I was just speaking to someone the other day and they were saying, yeah, my friend is a bit envious that I just landed my dream job, or I'm just meeting the guy that we always feel ahead or behind of the people that we're closest to. Even if we love them and we want them to win, there's that feeling. If someone's in a relationship, someone's got a friend that's feeling behind, or maybe they're the person who's feeling behind someone else. What do we do in that scenario? How do we support ourselves, support others? How can we think through that? Because I think feeling ahead or behind is never fun. Even feeling ahead is not fun.
Yeah. When you feel behind, that's your insecurity, putting a lid on what you believe is possible for you. So that's number one. Recognize that that's insecurity blocking you. And you can use that as a sign that, all I have to do is start walking toward things. The second thing I want to share with everybody is that it is normal to feel envious or even be somewhat of a jerk when somebody that you care about changes. And I want to tell a story to explain why.
Mm-hmm.
And the story, I'm the villain, okay? Which is basically the role I've played in my marriage. Poor Chris.
Chris is wonderful.
Yes, Chris is amazing. So Chris, a couple years ago, decided he was going to completely stop drinking. And he went on this deep spiritual journey, and he was going to stop drinking for a couple years. And he became a Buddhist meditation instructor and a yoga instructor and started his men's retreat business. And I'll never forget the first night that he was not drinking. I open up a bottle of rosé. I'm pouring a glass of rosé. Everything's great because I'm cooking. Great. The second night, as I'm opening up a bottle of rosé and Chris is like cracking open, like, I don't know, like a St. Croix, I'm starting to feel agitation. I'm starting to feel the campaign, the complaining, the this and the that. And I notice it. I'm like, don't say anything. The third day is when Mel the villain showed up. And I'm not proud to admit this, but I want everybody to hear this so you understand what's actually happening inside of your relationship. I crack open the rosé. I'm pouring my glass of wine. And I turn to Chris and I'm like, come on. You want to have a glass of rosé with me? And he says, no, I'm good. And I said, it's like juice.
It's like juice.
Jerk.
Give it to a 4-year-old.
There he goes.
Yeah, it's like juice.
Mel, I do not want a glass of wine. Stop asking me. And I said, okay, I'm sorry. It's just that it makes me feel bad. And this is when he said something that he said, nobody cares what's in your glass but you. And if what I'm putting in my glass makes you question what you're putting in yours, then maybe you have some work to do. And it is easier, everybody, to question somebody else's change and even sabotage it, because their change and growth creates a change in energy and ripples and changes in patterns that make you wake up and start realizing that maybe some of the things you do don't work for you. So when that friend of yours stays in to write a business plan, how many of us on a Saturday night are like, oh, come on, you work on it tomorrow. Do you have to go to the gym today? Stay in bed with me. That's that same behavior of dragging somebody to join in with you and pour what's in your cup. And so I want you to understand this is normal. And it's a really good sign, because it means that your behavior is not only changing you, but is sending waves at somebody else that has just given them a wake-up call. And most of us push against those wake-up calls. And that's what they're doing because you're very safe to do it with. And so that's something that's really important to understand. And I find that the best way to support somebody, because we all know we can't change somebody else, is you keep a laser focus on what you're doing. Because the bigger the change becomes and the happier you become, the more difficult it's going to be for your friend or your family to ignore it. And the more it's going to stir up more things and eventually inspiration. And the best thing that you can do is ask leading questions. Do not tell somebody what to do. That is the worst thing you can do in a relationship or friendship or as a parent. Instead, like literally, hey, you don't seem happy. Is there anything that I can do to help? You don't seem like yourself. Is something going on? Do you need support in something? And, my favorite sentence on the planet as a parent and as a wife is, do you need me to listen? Or would you like to know what I'm thinking? And 9 times out of 10, my kids, my husband, the folks that work for me, they just want me to listen. And so I think when you create an opening for somebody to stop engaging in their own self-doubt and their own very active and painful kind of reasons why they can't join you at the gym, or reasons why they're not going to meditate, or reasons why they're not going to join you in dry January or whatever it may be, or the reasons why they can't we all have a friend, I can't look for a job, I'm never going to find anybody. That's not true, and you know it. So create the space. You be the light on the path ahead. And when you hold your light higher, eventually that jealousy and those excuses, it actually allows it to disappear, and you become part of the force that pulls them forward. And the other thing you have to understand is that there are going to be legs of your journey in life, and this is one of the hardest things, where people are going to pull off and take a different route. That's okay. They may come back at another time. That's okay. And, the final thing that I wanted to say about this is it's a very simple exercise that you can do with somebody. And this helps somebody who is either struggling with happiness and doesn't know how to get started, or is struggling with confidence and is not able to take action, or who is resisting the changes that you are doing and you would love to see them do. We did this with our daughter, who is now 23, and last summer when she graduated from college, really unhappy. 2 years of college had been imploded, and she was extremely depressed and basically just drank her way through it and graduated and was not happy. Big life change. Nothing was going according to plan. She had planned this huge trip to go to Cambodia and do a big service trip for 4 months. That wasn't going to happen. Just lost. And so Chris and I sat with her for a couple hours, and then I said, and she's like, I don't know what to do. I'm 22. I'm stuck. I'm miserable. I don't even know how to start. And I said, I actually think you do. I think you're just scared. Take out a blank piece of paper. Draw a line down the center. On the left-hand side, I want you to write happy me. Now close your eyes and think about a time that you remember being happy, or more confident, or alive. It could be any word you want, right? And you might have to go back to childhood. Our daughter closed her eyes and she said, it was senior year in high school. And I said, okay. So write down all of the things that you were doing in a week of your life, senior year in high school. Just describe your life for me. Oh, I got up and do it in detail, everybody. I got up at 7 a.m. or 6:30. I was leaving the house by 7. I was with my friends all day. I was looking forward to going to college. I was playing varsity lacrosse. I was exercising 6 days a week. I was only partying with friends twice a week. I, was in a healthy dating relationship. I ate 4 dinners a night at home. Like just do. Great. Write down what your life looks like now. I sleep till 1. I drink every day. I feel like I don't see my friends because everybody's scattered now that we graduate. I don't have anything to look forward to. My trip to Cambodia is canceled. I'm not exercising. Okay. Compare the two. Your own life experience offers the map. And we want to overcomplicate these big words like happiness. I know I did for decades, or confidence. It's actually found in the little things. If you do this simple exercise of drawing a line down a piece of paper and you write down what life looked like in great detail, when did you wake up? When did you go to bed? How often were you with friends, family? What were you doing for work, exercise? What were you eating? If you then compare that to what life looks like now, you now know what to do. And the fact is, your whole life is the little things. It's when you wake up, it's the first thing you look at, it's what you do with your body, it's how you greet your spouse, it's how you talk to yourself, it's what you say to yourself when you look in the mirror, it's the mood that you walk into work with intentionally. It's how you greet your animals or your roommate when you end the day. It's the tone of voice that you use. That's your whole life. And if you were to just take the time and intentionally write down a few simple things that you do when you're happy in life, and you were to focus for the next 7 days on just adding one of those in a day, you would be very surprised how getting some of the little things right actually starts to turn your life in a completely different direction.
So powerful. Mel, it's been an absolute pleasure having you back on the show. The Miles Robbins podcast is out right now. You can go and listen, subscribe, share. Please, please, please go and do that. Mel, I love sitting down with you. Today was that perfect balance, as I was talking about before, of playing tennis, going back and forth, and at the same time, just getting some really practical, insightful advice from you on step-by-step, strategic, systematic breakdown of how to do things. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a dear friend to me and Radhi. I hope me, you, Chris, all of us get to spend lots more time together, genuinely, or even if it's not lots more time, but it's deep time together. That would make me very happy. And I wish you all the best on defeating the campaigns of misery for yourself and everyone else in the world through your show, through your books on Audible, through your book in the 5-second rule, and also for helping me start working on my campaigns of misery as well. So thank you so much, Mel. I deeply appreciate you. Very grateful to you.
I love you, Jay. And I can't wait to see you acting.
Yeah, now I have accountability.
So I want to offer another mistake I've made. And I've made this with both Chris and with our daughter, Kendall. So Chris, as he is running Soul Degree, which is men's retreat, and our daughter, Kendall, as she's writing music. One of the best things that you can do to help create momentum is to call out the teeny steps they're taking. I made a mistake with our daughter for a long time where I kept talking about the big stuff. Or I kept saying, but you're not writing songs, or this would make a great song, or, play me something new. And she would go, stop talking about this. Stop telling me what to do. Because when somebody loves you, they respect your opinion. And trust me, they know when they're not doing what they need to do every day. Mm-hmm. So you will support somebody more when you say, I'm really proud of you for the fact that you're very relaxed about this. I'm really proud of you for the fact that you're not beating yourself up, that it's not happened sooner. I'm really proud of you for marching to your own drum. I'm really proud of you for writing a song today and playing it. That's freaking awesome. Acknowledging the little stuff is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Because the person has to push through so much of their own stuff that if you go, oh, and you should do it this way, or, oh, have you tried that? Or, oh, it'd be great if you do this. You're not actually building momentum. You're pointing out what wasn't done. And that was something I was guilty of for a long time, catching myself and trying to look for, oh, what are they doing? And giving them that pat on the back, that hug, that high five, that verbal acknowledgement of the effort done, or even the fact that they haven't done anything, but they're thinking about it, that is worth it too.
And the reason we do that, this, is because we don't give ourselves a pat on the back for doing something small. So we don't even acknowledge when we do something small, we're waiting and we're saying to ourselves, oh, well, all you did today was go to the gym. all you did this week was go to the gym twice. That's not enough.
Yep.
And because we talk to ourselves like that, when someone in our life does it, it triggers us back going, yeah, they only went to the gym twice a week too. Like, that's terrible.
Yep.
And so I couldn't agree with you more. And I think I've had to be my own cheerleader for so much of my life and notice the little things that I've done and the little progress that with Radhi, I've definitely seen that, and she appreciates it, where I'll just, notice those smaller things. But I realize that anytime I get triggered by someone's lack of growth, it's because I'm triggered by my own lack of growth. And I'm just reflecting that back onto them. I'm upset with myself for not going to the gym more times this week. And because they haven't, I'm now releasing that on them. And that's been such a great way of going, okay, well, I need to be kinder to myself too for the little wins. Yes, it took you 2 years to launch this podcast, but there were things in those 2 years that you learned about getting to where you are now that you made so many steps of progress. And that's why, it's
and
doing
also,
so well.
there are so many little steps about completing things so that you can create room.
Yes.
And so one of the other things I want to offer too is, yes, that tendency for us to jump in and be like, oh, did you try this or do this or and like kind of create this snowball. It does come from the fact that a lot of us are not encouraging of ourselves, but it also comes from a really altruistic loving space.
Yes.
Because you love this person so much, you want it so much for them that as soon as you see a tiny step forward, you're like, let's do this. And you want to join in with them. And so it can come from both a place of your own lack of support for yourself as a default, unintentionally, but it also comes from a really good place because you're just so excited and you then amplify things and then they feel crushed because what they did do doesn't now feel like enough.
Absolutely. I love that clarification. I agree with this both. Everyone who's been listening and watching today, make sure you tag Mel and I on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, whatever social media platform you use, with all your greatest insights, nuggets of wisdom from this episode. There were so many scattered across the entire time we've been talking. Make sure you grab the screenshot of the episode, share it with a friend. Maybe there's someone in your life that would benefit from listening to this with you and then having a conversation about it afterwards. I think that's something I'm really encouraging. I find that when we're collectively having an experience, it's even better than saying, hey, I just heard this amazing thing. Listen to it with friends, listen to it with family, and then discuss it amongst yourselves. I hope we've given you enough tools and insight and thoughts to start a conversation, to ask a powerful question. And I hope that you're leaving here today feeling happier, healthier, and more healed. Thank you so much, On Purpose community. I love you deeply. And thank you to Mel for joining us again today. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everyone. If you want even more videos just like this one, make sure you subscribe and click on the boxes over here. I'm also excited to let you know that you can now get my book, Think Like a Monk, from thinklikeamonkbook.com. Check below in the description to make sure you order today.
Welcome to the Huberman Lab podcast, where we discuss science and science-based tools for everyday life. I'm Andrew Huberman, and I'm a professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford School of Medicine. My guest today is Dr. James Hollis. Dr. James Hollis is a Jungian psychoanalyst and author of more than 17 books about the self, relationships, and how to create the best possible life. Some of the notable titles and topics of those books include Creating a Life, Finding Your Individual Path, as well as The Eden Project, In Search of the Magical Other, which, as the name suggests, is about relationships. He has also written about how to access our most resilient self in the book entitled Living Between Worlds, Finding Personal Resilience in Changing Times. During today's discussion, Dr. Hollis teaches us what questions we need to ask of ourselves on a regular basis in order to best understand who we really are and what we most desire at the level of vocation, romantic relationships, friendship, and family, and indeed in relationship to life's journey. What you'll quickly realize during today's discussion with Dr. Hollis is that while yes, he is trained as a Jungian psychoanalyst, he is also very firmly grounded in practical tools. That is, he teaches us the simple and yet practical tools that we can each and all apply on a daily basis in order to make sure that we are staying on our best path. We discuss how family dynamics that we grew up in, as well as trauma and attachment styles, combine with our unique gifts and indeed our shadow side as well, in order to drive us down particular trajectories in life that sometimes lead us where we want to go, but other times lead us astray. And when they do, how to get back on track. Today's conversation with Dr. Hollis is truly a special one in that he rarely does podcast appearances. In fact, we traveled to him to record this podcast. That's how motivated I was to be able to sit down with him, because I'm familiar with his many books and his incredible teachings. But I really wanted to get his knowledge collected in one format, in one place. And what I can promise you is that by the end of today's podcast, you will be thinking differently about yourself, about the people in your life, and indeed, life itself. Before we begin, I'd like to emphasize that this podcast is separate from my teaching and research roles at Stanford. It is, however, part of my desire and effort to bring zero cost to consumer information about science and science-related tools to the general public. In keeping with that theme, I'd like to thank the sponsors of today's podcast. Our first sponsor is Matina. Matina makes loose leaf and ready-to-drink yerba mate. Now, I've long been a fan of yerba mate as a source of caffeine, in part because of its high antioxidant content, as well as its ability to elevate glucagon-like peptide 1, or GLP-1, which leads to a slight appetite-suppressing effect, as well as its ability to regulate blood sugar and possible neuroprotective effects. I also just happen to love the way that yerba mate tastes. I'll sometimes drink it hot by pouring hot water over the loose leaf yerba mate, and I'm particularly fond these days of drinking the zero sugar cold brew Matina yerba mate that I helped develop. Now, I realize that there are a lot of different brands of loose leaf and canned and bottled yerba mate out there, but the reason I like Matina the most is, first of all, it has absolutely the best taste of all of them. Secondly, they only use organic ingredients. And thirdly, because they offer low sugar and zero sugar varieties. If you'd like to try Matina, you can go to drinkmatina.com/Huberman. That's spelled drink, MATEINA.com/Huberman. Right now, Matina is offering a free 1-pound bag of loose leaf yerba mate tea and free shipping with the purchase of 2 cases of their cold brew yerba mate. Again, that's drinkmatina.com/Huberman. Today's episode is also brought to us by Joovv. Joovv makes medical-grade red light therapy devices. Now, if there's one thing that I've consistently emphasized on this podcast, it's the incredible impact that light, meaning photons, can have on our mental health and physical health. Red and near-infrared light has been shown to have profound effects on improving cellular health, which can help with faster muscle recovery, boosting healthier skin, reducing pain and inflammation, enhancing sleep, and much more. What sets Joovv apart is that it uses clinically effective wavelengths, emits a safe and effective dose of red and near-infrared light, and most importantly, offers the only true medical-grade red light panel available. I personally try to use the handheld Joovv Go unit, as it's called, every day, and especially when I'm on the road traveling. If you'd like to try Joovv, you can go to joovv.com/Huberman. That's JOOVV.com/Huberman. Joovv is offering an exclusive discount to Huberman Lab podcast listeners with up to $400 off Joovv products. Again, that's joovv.com/Huberman. Today's episode is also brought to us by BetterHelp. BetterHelp offers professional therapy with a licensed therapist carried out online. Now, I've been going to therapy for well over 30 years. Initially, I didn't have a choice. It was a condition of being allowed to stay in school. But pretty soon I realized that therapy is extremely valuable. In fact, I consider doing regular therapy just as important as getting regular exercise, including cardiovascular exercise and resistance training, which of course I also do every week. The reason I know therapy is so valuable is that if you can find a therapist with whom you can develop a really good rapport, you not only get terrific support for some of the challenges in your life, but you also can derive tremendous insights from that therapy. Insights that can allow you to better not just your emotional life and your relationship life, but of course also the relationship to yourself and to your professional life, to all sorts of career goals. In fact, I see therapy as one of the key components for meshing together all aspects of one's life and being able to really direct one's focus and attention toward what really matters. If you'd like to try BetterHelp, go to betterhelp.com/Huberman to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's betterhelp.com/Huberman. And now for my discussion with Dr. James Hollis. Dr. James Hollis, such an honor and a pleasure to sit down with you. I'm a huge fan of your writing, and I'm excited to talk to you today.
Thank you, Andrew. It's a privilege to be with you.
Thank you. Let's talk about the self. This is something that I think people occasionally wonder about. You know, who am I? We wake up every day. We have some stable representation of who we are in our name most of the time. And we develop a self, a story based on what we know about our parents, our siblings, our life. From the perspective of Jungian psychology, maybe psychology generally, how should we think about ourselves?
Well, first of all, the idea of the self with a capital S, to distinguish it from the ego consciousness, that is to say, my conscious presence as you and I are talking right now, is a transcendent other. It's a mystery. It's essentially governed by our instincts. It's nature seeking its own expression and its own healing. What I've seen in terms of the activity of the self through the years, it has two agendas. One, healing when injured, and secondly, expressing itself in the same way that the acorn becomes the oak tree, so to speak. Now, the ego, of course, is that little scintilla of energy that begins to cluster. We're born without an ego, but then there's this assembled shards of experience between the me and the not me that slowly accumulate, almost in tidal pools, so that I begin to differentiate myself from the other, my mother, let's say, or my father, or the object that is there. And you're right. We are an animal that seeks to understand as part of our adaptation to the world. And so we are narrative animals. We create stories about it. And our stories rise out of what we're experiencing at the moment. So you can see why a person born into a certain culture or a certain family of origin with its style of relating or disrelating, as the case may be, becomes the ground for defining that person's sense of self. So it's important to distinguish between the self and one's sense of self. The sense of self is who I think I am. In any given moment, that's very fluid, of course. Now, we have all kinds of internal clusters of energy that are called complexes, a term that Jung popularized. And complexes are splinter personalities, he said. So a person might say, why did I get so upset yesterday? What came over me? Or I don't know what I was thinking when I made this important decision. And that's our recognition that we were in an altered state at that moment, that something within us had been triggered, had sufficient energy to come up, usurp ego consciousness, and take it over. Actually, the term that Jung used in German meant possession. It's a state of psychic possession temporarily. We joke that lovers are fools or lovers are blind. So we know that people are they're caught in a certain projection onto the other. And, that ultimately gets, resolved into some sort of reality through time and experience with that individual. But in that state of being, one senses that one's making the right decision. And no one wakes in the morning and says, for example, well, today I think I'm going to do the same stupid, counterproductive things I've done for decades, but there's a good chance we will. Why? Because we have certain clusters of energy in us that are regularly triggered. When triggered, they catalyze a response in the ego that enacts that program. So it affects our body, it affects our script, and of course it affects our perception of self and world. So from the standpoint of therapy, one of the things we try to do is suggest to people, you're not what happened to you, because one of our tendencies is to internalize whatever's happening to us. And thinking of that defines us. Of course, the younger, the less formed we are, the more we're likely to be defined by poverty or by disease or by alcoholism or by sexism or whatever the social constructs are into which we're born, as well as the psychodynamics of the family of origin. So in those circumstances, we all have a provisional sense of self. And if you have a culture that says this is who you are, this is what your orders are, your marching orders, here's your script, and the more authoritarian the culture, or the more traumatic one's environmental situation and family of origin, the more likely I'm going to be reacting to that. So when I've had an experience, I'm either going to repeat it, or I'm going to try to run from it, or maybe I'll be spending my life trying to treat it in some way that I'm not aware of. This activates many people into the healing professions, by the way, whether it's clergy, nursing, therapy, et cetera, that's often a sensitive child in the family who feels, I have to try to stabilize my environment in order to sort of get things back to a normal state, whatever that might be, so that then it can be there for me. But of course, that never quite happens. The child can't fix